All right, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. And before we do anything else, I'm going to turn it over to the mayor for comments about the tragic situation.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I can be really quick, but I had asked Chair Stone today to give us a moment where we could reflect on the event out in Tumbler Ridge in BC. I heard the mayor from Tumbler Ridge this morning on the radio, and it was absolutely devastating. It's a community of a little over 2,000 people. He said someone had asked him, did you know any of them? And he said, we're a little over 2,000 people. We know all of them. And it's one big family. So it just struck me as to what an incredible tragedy, and what he talked about was the need for love and support. So I just thought it was really important that we reflect on that today and just think about them and, embrace them with love, as he suggested.
I'll ask everyone to stand and we'll take a few moments of silence. Thanks very much. All right. Thanks for that, Mayor Alcock. So I declare we do have quorum. Everyone's here. And I'm going to ask Councillor Cloutier to read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. I would respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishbeg under the terms of the Robinson-Huron Treaty number 61 of 1850 and the Williams Treaty of 1923. We commit to acknowledge, learn, educate, create opportunity, honor sacred places, take actions towards real truth and reconciliation in support of our commitment to walking the path together in respect, peace, and harmony for future generations.
Thanks very much. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? I see none. All right. I'd like to welcome everyone to the public portion of today's meeting considering applications to amend the Community Planning Permit Bylaw 2022-97 pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act. The public meeting will be as follows. Staff will provide a brief explanation of the purpose and effect of the application along with any correspondence received to date. The applicant or the representative may offer additional comments without repeating information already outlined by staff. Members of the public attending in person or electronically will be invited to ask questions or provide comments. Council will then have the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant, staff, or any presenters. After the public meeting is concluded, all input received, Council will consider the proposed amendments. Any person making representation is asked to state their name and mailing address, and please note that presentations are limited to 10 minutes. If Council approves any bylaw amendment applications this afternoon, notice of decision will be issued commencing a 20-day appeal period. During the period and in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, the applicant, the municipality, and eligible persons and public bodies may file an appeal. No building permits may be issued or any related work proceeded during the appeal period. Anyone wishing to receive notice of a bylaw's passage, any appeals, or possible Ontario Land Tribunal proceedings must submit a written request prior to the bylaw's passage. Requests may be filed with the recording secretary or the clerk. Each notice of complete application and public meeting included an explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposed amendment, and notice was required to have been posted at the subject lands. Notice was therefore considered to have been provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and applicable sections of the Huntsville Official Plan. And with that, we're going to the first application, and Kelsey's going to present this.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just get the presentation up, thank you. Through you, the subject property is located at 5 Haynes Road. Oops. The property is within the urban residential designation of the urban settlement area under the official plan, and within the urban residential 1 precinct, low density, and urban residential 2 precinct, medium density. So it's kind of split between the property. As you can kind of see from it, there was a road allowance that originally went through the property, so that's kind of why there's that existing division. The applicant is proposing to construct a 5-story mixed-use building containing ground floor commercial space with 100 purpose-built rental units above. Of these units, 16 will be designated affordable dwelling units. To permit this development, an amendment to the community planning permit is required to change the precinct to an urban residential high-density precinct. This amendment is necessary to allow the mixed commercial uses on the ground floor, along with the changes to height, density, parking standards, and loading requirements. The applicant is seeking to permit a range of commercial uses on the ground floor, including retail, services, office, restaurant, health services, and several institutional and community-oriented uses. Some of these are permitted as discretionary uses, but are not permitted as of right. The proposed exception would also increase the maximum permitted height from 11 meters to 18.5 meters, and increase the residential density from 60 units per gross hectare to 83 units per gross hectare. In addition, the proposal seeks relief to reduce parking standards for both commercial uses and residential units, including the reduced requirement for affordable units, as well as technical reliefs for aisle width and parking stall dimensions and location of loading spaces. So you can see all these reliefs listed on screen, as well as in the report package. The development is short a number of parking spaces, I believe 17, and after applying the reduced parking rate for rental and affordable units, as you might remember, the Housing Action Plan made changes to the bylaw, which reduced rates for those type of uses. So those have been applied to the various rental units and affordable units. There's also been a reduction to the number of spaces that are required to be 3 meters in width. So the requirement's 20% and 0% are required. So they're only the 2.6 meter parking spaces. And I just wanted to note that the affordable rental units are proposed for a 7-year term. And when we discuss these reductions in parking, the bylaw talks about a 25-year term in a development agreement. So if this term is to remain the same, there might be potential consequences later for needing cash in lieu of parking or further variances. The site is accessed from both Haynes Road and Shea Road, with connecting internal drive aisle and parking areas in the north and south of the proposed building. A raised sidewalk is proposed within the building and around the perimeter of the building. 2 outdoor areas are proposed, one beside the building to the west for flexible programming, and a large amenity area to the east within the 14-meter MTO setback along Highway 60. So I could just show you these. So one area is the highways along this road, this side, and then the other areas to this side. The proposed development is located in an area identified as intensification and urban growth in Huntsville's official plan. It is an urban settlement area. The urban residential designation encourages high-density residential uses and mixed-use development where appropriate. The official plan permits increase in height and density where development demonstrates compatibility with its surrounding environment and community, and proportional benefits are provided for the additional height and density. In this case, the applicant proposes 16 affordable rental units as I mentioned, only for a 6-7 year period as the primary community benefit supporting the increase in height density. The official plan compatibility criteria emphasizes ensuring built form transitions, maintains appropriate site design, incorporating landscaping and buffering. The applicant has submitted a landscape visual impact study, which assesses the visibility of the proposed building from 13 viewpoints and concluded that the visual impacts will be minor due to the building siting on the lower portion of the lot and screened from surrounding vegetation. Please note that the agent's presentation does include some of these viewpoints from the study. And reviewing this study, we view the conclusion as accurate, but there could be additional retention opportunities that could be explored, particularly within the landscape buffers. The tree inventory and preservation plan identified which existing trees can be retained through the development process, with 36 individual trees and 2 polygons preserved and appropriate protection measures for these trees during construction. Staff have requested that additional opportunities for tree retention be explored, as noted before, to maintain the natural character and minimize visual impacts. A traffic impact study was also submitted and concludes that the development will cause no capacity issues for the surrounding area, surrounding roads, and that the proposed accesses will operate efficiently. However, operations staff have identified some issues and required revisions, including review of seasonal adjustments, access design, and pedestrian safety and connectivity. These comments have been forwarded to the applicant for incorporation into the updated study. The TIS has also been provided to the Ministry of Transportation for review, but the formal review of the study has not yet been completed by their traffic department. The functional servicing and stormwater management report confirms that the development can be serviced using the existing municipal systems, subject to district verification of capacity and hydraulic modeling. Stormwater management can be managed through a treatment train approach with downstream flooding impacts. No downstream flooding impacts are anticipated. Some technical comments from operations have been provided, and those revisions are requested. And MTO has provided now a high-level comments following the agenda posting, which are also required to have further review and consideration. Sorry, is there one more? Oh, no. District staff have indicated that they would not be opposed to the approval of the application, provided that the site-specific exception ensures the development is fully serviced to district satisfaction and includes confirmation of capacity, and any required system upgrades are made and identified through the hydraulic modeling. As noted, MTO comments were given following the agenda posting, which discussed further MTO requirements and review. These comments will have to be addressed prior to staff providing a recommendation on the application. The application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act, and no objections have been received. Staff note, however, the signage for the public meeting was posted along Shea Road, which receives limited traffic. So staff have requested additional signage be posted along Haynes Road to ensure that public are fully informed and that the application and there's opportunity for further comment. At this time, staff are continuing to work with the applicant and external agencies to address outstanding technical reviews and matters, including revisions to the traffic impact study and the functional servicing report. And any comments, further comments from the Ministry of Transportation will be passed on. Once these matters have been addressed and updated materials received, staff will be in a position to bring forward recommendation to Council. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or the representative to make any comments. You need to put the mic on, please. Awesome.
Steve McDonald, 207 Grassmere Resort Road, P1H2J6. Thanks, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Steve McDonald. I live here in Huntsville. I also own Patty Mac, which is a custom home building company that employs 100 people. across Huntsville and the greater Muskoka area. These are tradespeople and professionals who live here, work here, and raise their families here. I'm also a partner at Norterra Development Group, which is the group that's bringing you this development proposal today. My partner, Zach, has also deep ties to Muskoka and Huntsville. My wife is Dara Howell, who's an Olympic gold medalist who was born and raised in Huntsville. This community is home for us in every sense of the word. Because we live here, we see firsthand a real and growing need for housing and hardworking people and their families. We experience it directly through our business. The employees and subcontractors we work with struggle to find housing close to where they work. Zach and I went looking for something like this and found this site. We saw an opportunity not just to build, but to add value to Huntsville while respecting Muskoka's character, heritage, and sense of community. It's important for council to understand that we are local. We are not an out-of-town developer here to maximize profits. We live here, we work here, and our reputations are here. We understand Muskoka, and it is our goal to build responsibly and thoughtfully in a way that fits the fabric of the community. At its core, this proposal is about providing housing for people who keep Huntsville running, the people who want to live here, work here, and stay here. Thank you for the time and consideration. I'm going to hand it over to Brandon, our planner, to walk you guys through the application.
And maybe if you could just pull up the presentation. There's just a few slides I'll just build on the great analysis that Kelsey already provided. Great to be here in front of the town's planning council, members of the public as well. This is a really exciting project because this council has really made housing a priority and has really sought opportunities to look at opportunities to accommodate maybe increased hydro density where it's appropriate to do so, because that allows for more housing to be delivered, and also because the town's CPP bylaw establishes a really effective community benefit framework where you can get community benefits in exchange for the increase of the height and density. So there's kind of a double benefit there, more housing and the community benefit. And we think this site's perfect for exactly that type of opportunity. Until recently, kind of this quadrant, if you will, to the southeast of Haynes Road and Center Street and to the west of Highway 60, not a lot had been happening there. Recently, though, you have obviously the Paisley Center Plaza right on the corner, Festing Toyota, which is, I think, nearing completion, the Fairburn Long-Term Care Home also nearing completion. You're all very familiar with the former Eagle Ridge subdivision. Now we're calling it the Paisley Center project, which was approved last year. So this is really kind of an evolving mixed use context along the Haynes Street corridor. And there are a lot of really good uses that can support new residential development at this location right at Haynes Road and Highway 60. In fact, town staff undertook a colossal effort, I'll say, to consider opportunities to potentially accommodate increased height and density in appropriate areas throughout the town. And one of the activities that they completed as part of this was to assess where could it be appropriate to look at increased height or density. And this site was identified as one that most of the site fell into the high suitability category. And what was the reason for that? Well, for one, it's more than 500 meters away from the nearest low-density residential neighborhood to the west or to the south. It's got convenient access to commercial uses along Haynes Road, also not too far from downtown Huntsville. The elevation of the site's actually below Highway 60 and Haynes Road, which reduces the perceived height of any building here coming from those main roads. There's obviously a large woodlot in the Paisley Center project to the south of this site that's going to be maintained in perpetuity. That'll act as a large natural screen and buffer from the area to the south. And as I mentioned earlier, it was already identified as a high suitability area for increased height and density. And we think this is an excellent opportunity to look at something that fits into this context. And so what's proposed here is a 5-story mixed-use building, just a little over 18 meters in height, which is exactly what staff were looking at when they did that exercise earlier. 100 units proposed, all purpose-built rental, a mix of studio 1 and 2 bedroom units. 16 of those are proposed as affordable for a minimum 7-year period, though we're looking at opportunities to potentially extend that through working with the district's rental housing or affordable housing incentive program, which provides essentially increased incentives the longer that it's affordable. So there's a very good structure to that program to try to incentivize longer affordability periods. a very meaningful amount of commercial space here, 1,450 square meters. Most of the ground floor, and that'll include potentially a daycare, fitness facility, retail stores, restaurants, a range of other uses as well, which can maintain and support that commercial function of the Haynes Road corridor. Parking reductions are proposed, a very modest reduction to the requirement for non-residential uses from, I believe it's 1 space per 25 to 1 space per 30 square meters. And then for the affordable units, it's going from 0.75 spaces a unit to 0.5. But the market rate units, which are the majority, will maintain what's currently permitted by the bylaw, which is 1 space per unit plus 1 space for every 5 units. And that's because this is a rental building, as I mentioned earlier, and it'll be secured as such with the town. The community benefit that I mentioned, that the community benefits or the community planning permit bylaw requires in exchange for increased height and density, will be the 7 affordable units here. But the important thing to note here is that it's not just strictly affordable units that are at need in the town. The district's housing and homelessness plan also talks about attainable housing and kind of puts rent ranges in terms of what is needed. And the market units here, in all likelihood, are going to fall into that category as well. So it's not just the 16 affordable units, but really the 84 other market units are also, I would suggest, attainable housing. And certainly they're going to be because this type of built form allows for cheaper rents than, say, single detached houses. It's going to obviously be inherently cheaper than what the lion's share of the town's housing stock is. So this is a really good addition to diversify the housing opportunities and provide cheaper housing options for people who need to and want to live in the town. In terms of some of the good locational context for this site, these are some cross sections going north-south through the site. Starting at the top, obviously, to the north of Haynes Road, you have a further increase in topography. But what you'll see here is that the surface of the building is set about 5 meters below Haynes Road and about 6 meters below Highway 60. So that means when you're coming down Highway 60, it's going to look like a 3-story building instead of a 5-story building. So what we've tried to do is purposefully set the building in the middle of the site, but towards the Shea Road elevation, which is lower than the Haynes Road elevation, because we wanted to bring everything down overall. And what the lower image shows is you have this big green space in the Paisley Center development site to the south, which acts as a very deep buffer from anyone looking towards the site from the south, be that from downtown or from Lions Lookout. And as Kelsey mentioned, we did a landscape visual impact study as part of the application, which looked at a number of different views throughout the town and actually would render in what does this building look like. And the result is that from those viewpoints, it's either not going to be visible or very minimally visible, and we've come up with some other design recommendations that can help mitigate any potential impacts further. And so just to kind of finish off in terms of the building design, we know how important it is for a building of this scale in the Huntsville context to be designed well with materials that work locally, that fit into the kind of the Muskoka character, if you will. And so what Norterra have done very early on, because we're not even at essentially the site plan process so far, is they've come up with essentially 4 different kind of design options that we've put forth to staff and that we'll work to implement through the future CPP application. All of them, though, look at using, masonry materials as a primary focal point. Kind of modern, but with a kind of a traditional twist in terms of incorporating those materials, but also trying to incorporate, especially in the case of the first option, kind of more earth tony, muted colors and things that can fit into the natural backdrop, which also help with any mitigation of potential design or landscape visual impacts. So we're very happy with how far we've come along with this. Obviously, we're not at that detailed design stage yet. But we firmly believe that this is a great site for this type and scale of development, and that the housing benefits that it's going to bring are going to be incredibly important for the town of Huntsville. That's all I have for this afternoon, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Before we go to questions, I'm going to ask if any member of the public would like to speak to this application. I'm not seeing anyone stepping up. If anyone online that would like to speak to this application, you need to raise your electronic hand. And we'll wait while you do that.
Chair Stone, I see no hands
No
raised.
hands. All right. Council members, comments or questions? Councilor Cluche.
Through you, Chair Stone. I like this, just for the simple fact is like everything, location means everything. Where the location is, it's not in somebody's backyard that we've had to deal with before and get people upset. I think it helps a little bit with the niche with the employees that are going to be working at the new Fairburn Center. So I like the location. I think it's great. I'll have to look at probably a little bit more future transportation to that corridor with that amount of apartments there. But the public transit does come as far as the Toyota dealership right now.
Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and thank you, everyone, for the presentation, and to staff for a complete report. You had me at mixed development. I can say I was around when we approved the Eagle Ridge development, and it was always intended as an overall development site for mixed development. And so looking at this project today, this is the beginning of the higher density residential component, and I really, really like what I see, and I love the fact, obviously, it's rental, therefore it will qualify for a reduction in development charges. That's great. And you know, the reference to the local features, all of that is great. I do have a question around the affordable housing component, because when I read the report and in the presentation, I love the fact that there's an intent for 16 units. I'm not sure how you got to the 7 years, if you were thinking of approaching the district for their MAHIP program, which is a 20-year or 25-year locked-in agreement, then you get additional money towards each unit. Or if this was something that the developer was thinking of doing on their own. So I just any information around that would be appreciated.
Certainly. So the affordable units, the 16 of them at the 7 years, is something that's going to be provided with or without any additional incentives from the district. That's being provided to satisfy the requirements of the bylaw to provide a kind of a community benefit in exchange for the increase in height and density. So the 2 extra floors and the modest increase in density, I think it's from 60 to 83 units per hectare. And what I'll note is, so most of the ground floor, there's a small lobby and amenity area, but it's mostly commercial. So it's really 4 floors of residential, 25 units per floor. So that means that of the kind of additional floors, almost half of them are the affordable units. And so this is really, I think, what the bylaw gets at, is that they want a direct relationship between the increase in height and density and what the community benefit is. And so we kind of pushed Norterra to come up with a very meaningful amount here, even in an urban context. So look at Toronto, major transit station areas. So this is within 500 meters of a subway. The province has said the most affordable housing Toronto can require a developer is 5%. What's being proposed here is 16%, so 3 times that. This is a very meaningful amount. The 7 years, again, is what's being proposed no matter what. But if there's an opportunity to work with the district to get incentives to make that longer, then that will come on top of that.
And that's the part. I appreciate that. And I know you had made reference to the fact of, you know, if we're applying for extra or additional units, then that is the community benefit. But that clarifies it for me. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Armour.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Stone. I'm not sure you can answer this. I just wonder what the status of Shea Road is right now with the MTO and ownership.
Does anyone know that? Does the province know that? No.
Chair Stone, I believe that it is still a discussion between MTO.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Just a very quick follow-up. I hope it doesn't hold up a project of this magnitude.
Thank you. There is a maintenance agreement with MTO, so that it shouldn't be an issue.
Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and thank you for the report. I too, I would echo what I've heard around the table. I'm excited about this project for sure. I love the fact that you're looking at it from a incorporating it into the landscape and making it look as if it fits within our, with our area. The one view that you didn't talk about was the view from Highway 60. So if you're looking from the Paisley side towards it, like from the south side or the west side, but from the east side looking this way, it's going to be quite glaring from the highway. People are driving quickly, but that corridor as you go down that route is quite iconic. So that was my one concern. And I know at this point we are able to ask questions. We're not making any decisions today. The other thing that I noted was obviously the benefits of the rental units, great. I would concur with what the mayor said about extending that 7 years, more than 7 years, and I think you've addressed that. You did mention, though, one of the benefits was public art. And of course, for me, that just jumps out and says, what kind of public art are you thinking? And there was also a mention of a cultural institutional space. Can you describe what those two, the public art and the space, would be great to hear.
Through Chair Stone, to clarify, I think what you're referencing, if I'm remembering what I typed up in that report, I think we were listing what the bylaw or the official plan lists out as potential public benefits. So what we're proposing here is the affordable housing. We're not proposing the public art. We are proposing to add a number of non-residential uses, permitted uses, so perhaps that could include some sort of cultural facility or something, but what we're proposing specifically to address that requirement is the affordable housing. And to answer to address your earlier comment or question, we do have, I kind of have a few supplemental slides that include some views from the visual mech study, including some from Highway 60. If you'd like me to maybe pull them up real quick, just for your reference, if the committee will indulge.
It is something that I'm also interested in. Do you have them readily?
Yes, we were thinking that you might want to see them. They're also in the presentation, Maya, at the end.
Yeah, there's a nice full screen in the presentation. Yeah.
Go ahead.
While we're just waiting for that, I just wanted, one other thing that jumped into my mind was the, I just came back from the Netherlands, and this concept of having residents above commercial is everywhere. And I mean, I think in Europe they do it a lot because people don't have to walk that far to get groceries or to get things, So that concept of having that, residents with commercial beneath and even be able to walk to the stores is great. So thank you for that.
So let me just pull ahead. Where was it? Okay, so here's an example, kind of a before and after. This is Highway 60 on the east side, looking towards Haynes Road. So kind of the existing context and what's proposed. And I mean, the reality is that any development on the site is certainly going to be visible from Highway 60. But from our perspective, the principal views and kind of view sheds are looking down Highway 60 towards the lake. When you look across Haynes Road, what you see is the new Toyota dealership. You see the new grocery store and retail plaza. This is the urban area of the town. This has long been planned for higher density development, as Mayor Alcock knows. So from my perspective, the whole visual impact study is not to say that you can't have visual impacts. There are other views, the more scenic views, where that kind of consideration is, I think, more important. From my perspective here, the most important thing is mitigating and understanding what the visual impact is. And so what we've done is we've located the building on the low part of the site so that it looks like 2 or 3 stories rather than 5 stories. And also kind of the use of those, the masonry, kind of more of an muted earth tone that kind of blends in. And the good news too here is that Highway 60 is a very wide right of way. Most of the trees, or a significant portion of the trees that you see here, are within that right of way and so won't be touched. There will be some tree removals on the site. We're also mandated to provide a minimum 14-meter building setback from the corridor for the MTO. The actual setback, I believe, is about 24 meters. And kind of in that area, there's a little bit of parking, perhaps some outdoor amenity, but also additional landscaping. And I think Kelsey already noted that one of the comments that staff has provided is, can you retain more trees? And so one of the things we're going to be looking at as we move this project forward and move on to the next stage is further refining the tree retention plan to try to retain more trees along there or plant more trees along there. So it's definitely something we've looked at and we take it very seriously, but in the context of where this is and what it's planned for, I think it's appropriate. And I think it's actually a good thing because it's a symbol of the town's support for housing and appropriate housing in appropriate locations, not in someone's backyard, as Councillor Cloutier mentioned.
Just a very, thank you, Chair Stone, but just a brief, looking at that building and seeing it there, you could put a mural on the side of it, right? That was, right there, right there. There's my idea. Enough said.
I'll go back to an earlier image where there was kind of some notionally some signage or something shown there. So there definitely is an opportunity for, in fact, one of our recommendations is to do something on that wall because it's a prominent kind of, feature and view. Yeah, so agreed.
Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chair. So just a comment from me. While I appreciate the applicant's desire to build rentals, I don't think I would support this application if it came to council for a decision. I've been pretty consistently, openly opposed to these types of five-story developments. And these large, high-density developments don't belong in Huntsville.
All right, fair enough. All right, Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Chair Stone. Just a quick question. I fully support this. 100 units inserted into our town will have a massive impact on the community, and the impact on the community will not be significant at all. It'll be minimal. I do know we've had some very long discussions about those that are in residential neighborhoods, and for good reason. This will not have an impact on any resident at all. The one thing you showed there, two questions. One, the thing you showed in the drawing showed an outdoor skating rink. I want to know, is that just conceptual and it may happen? And then also the breakdown of bachelors, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom.
Certainly, through Chair Stone, maybe if we could just pull the presentation back up just so I could help kind of go through that. So just starting, just because it comes up first with the unit breakdown. So what's proposed, 12 studio units, 60 1-bedroom units, and 28 2-bedroom units. And the affordable mix is proposed to be proportionate of that, so kind of a mix of the different unit types for the affordable as well. I will say these are on the larger side of what you typically see for apartment units, and that's, I think, the response to what the market demands here. It's not like in a Toronto market where it's a shoebox unit can sell or rent to an investor. These are for end users, and so they're going to be designed to be usable. And I think when we bring this back to council in the future, what I'll have with me are approximate unit sizing as well, and I can provide a bit of comparison just for council's kind of information on that. And what you'll also see on here is the proposed outdoor amenity area kind of along that highway. 60 frontage is also another one over here in the west part of the site. And so the last image that kind of does include a nice skating rink is kind of just a fun little thing to show kind of what this could look like. The exact programming for that area is, I think, to be determined. I think a skating rink would be a great idea. It wouldn't be, you wouldn't be the best game of skating. It'd be a bit narrow, it'd be more of like kind of a trail, if anything, but to be determined. But they definitely, the applicants believe, and I think this council does as well, that a good amenity package is important for the residents. And so that's definitely something they're trying to achieve.
Follow up?
Yeah, sorry, thanks for clarifying. I saw the breakdown, but I was more referring to the affordable housing unit breakdown, of what that'll be. And a rink, even if it's small, like our one downtown, gets heavy use. So if it's a lot of work, though, a lot of work.
So I just have a question. So the amenity area and some parking appears to be in the Highway 60 corridor. Do you anticipate getting that? Do you have any information to say that you will be able to use that?
In my experience, the MTO is fine with parking in their setback as long as you don't count it towards the zoning bylaw requirement, because if they do take a widening in the future, they don't want to make it so that you no longer comply with the bylaw. So we have not counted those spaces in the bylaw requirements that we're proposing here. Those are essentially extra over and above that. The amenity space, I mean, what their big concern is buildings and big structures, because they don't want to force you to demolish it when they take it. So, we received comments just yesterday, I believe it was, Kelsey, that did not flag any concerns of what we're proposing, kind of reiterated what they need to see as part of the future permit application. But we know that the MTO is supportive of trails and things in their setback. So I'm fairly confident that we can work with them on on a program that is light on structures, but could include maybe some community garden type thing for residents, little benches or landscape areas, maybe a little skating trail or something like that. Who knows? Walking trail. So I'm optimistic we can get something like that supported. But we also have other areas on the site, and we have some kind of backup options where we could include some additional amenity if that's not something that's ultimately supported.
Thanks. Councilor Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Chair Stone, and thank you both for your presentation. Most of my questions were answered with good questions around the table here. I'm happy moving forward to support this and that you're going to pursue further affordability options with the district. So thanks.
All right. Thanks very much. Councilor Schumacher has a question.
Yeah, well, no more comment. Yeah, because most of the questions were answered. My Google Maps apparently does not work very well because when I was going through this before today, it looked like it was on the side beside the paramedics. And of course, then I'm thinking, okay, 5 stories there, not a good idea. But I do appreciate that it's on the downhill slope, and I appreciated you showing us that it does really look like a 3-story, which would be allowed as of right. That's what people need to realize, is if they're looking at that, the 3-story would have been allowed as of right. I appreciate that you're coming with the 16 units, affordable, and the accessible, accompaniments as the accessibility chair that, kind of go with that as well. And I like that because, again, we've had people come before wanting the 4th or 5th story, but they're going to the district to see if they can get the affordable housing. And I like that you guys are coming with it regardless. You want that as the community benefit, and it's definitely going to be a community benefit. I have said time and again, we have Fairburn right there, and you have PSWs who are going to need, housing and places to stay. So that is good. So yeah, for the most part, I am in support of this. I think it's a good development for the area.
All right. This came for information only, so there's no resolution. Thank you very much for your presentations.
Thank you very much.
All right. Kelsey, you're moving on to the Ripple and Pallet Lake application.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, again. Let's wait a bit. Through you, sorry. Whatever you.
Yes. Thank you. You can go ahead.
Through you, the subject property is located at 159 Ripple and Pallet Lake Road. The property is within the waterfront and rural designation in the official plan, and the property is within the rural residential precinct within the CPP bylaw with natural constraint 2 overlay. The applicant is proposing to create 1 new rural residential lot. To facilitate this, the applicant has also submitted a community planning permit bylaw amendment application and a consent application. The proposed severed lot would have an area of approximately 1 hectare with 60 meters of frontage, and the retained lot would have an area of approximately 1 hectare with 25 meters of frontage on a year-round maintained portion of the road of Ripple and Pallet Lake Road, and 122 meters on the seasonal portion of Ripple and Pallet Lake Road. So you could see here is there's a turnaround here at the end of where the plow goes around, and there's a small portion that's on the year-round maintained road, and then the rest is on the seasonal road. The existing driveway access is for the retained lot, proposed retained lot is to the year-round maintained road, and would continue to provide access for the retained lot, which is developed with a single detached dwelling, while the severed lot would be obtaining its own entrance permit. The requested application for the amendment seeks to change the precinct on a portion of the lands from rural residential to rural residential XXX YYY in order to recognize the use of the alternative rural residential lot standards for both lots, and deem the 25 meters of frontage on a year-round maintained road as compliant for the retained lot. These standards allow for the lots with a minimum area of 1 hectare and 60 meter frontage, subject to other criteria, and the ultimate approval of a community planning permit bylaw. So the severed lot meets the alternative lot standards. So they're showing here that it would have the 15-meter buffer and would be able to have an envelope in consideration of the slopes on the site as well as the other criteria. Whereas the retained lot does not meet the frontage requirement, which is why the amendment is needed. Oops. There's the arrows, severed retained. Under the Huntsville official plan, the lands exhibit characteristics of both waterfront and rural designation. However, because the subject lands are physically separated from Ripple Lake by the rural residential lot in front and by the road itself, and because there's no direct visual or functional relationship to the shoreline, staff determined that the land is more appropriately considered in the rural designation. The rural designation permits the use of the alternative rural lot standards, provided that the lands are appropriately sized, compatible with surrounding land uses, serviced appropriately, and do not constitute a state residential development. The applicant has demonstrated compliant development envelope on the severed lands, and the retained lands continue to function as a rural residential lot. So you can see the development on the retained lots in front of you. District commented that the district official plan, the lands lies partially within the waterfront area. However, the district recognizes that the town may assess site-specific circumstances differently and recommends to council that council be satisfied that the lands function as rural and that the alternative lot standards are appropriate. Staff have taken this review and are satisfied that the lands do not function as a waterfront backlot, instead are fit under the rural area policies of the Huntsville official plan. The application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act and the Community Planning Permit Bylaw. No additional comments were received through circulation. Through staff's review and analysis, the applications appear to conform with the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial planning statement. As a result, staff are recommending approval of the amendment and provisional approval of the consent, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report. Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'll call on the applicant or representative to make any comments.
Good afternoon, Chair Stone Committee. Lanny Dennis Planning. I represent the owner. I believe he's online today as well. Certainly appreciate the efforts of staff bringing the application forward. I've had a chance to review the report and obviously listen to the presentation. I think that's an accurate and reasonable assessment of the proposal. I concur with the planning department to approve the application and have no issues with respect to the conditions that have been recommended. Just very quickly, the severed lot complies and conforms with the official plan for frontage and area, and the retained lot, as noted by the planning department, was deficient in year-round municipally maintained road frontage, albeit that road is maintained year-round by the residents that also use that section of the road. Certainly not visible from the lake, hence it's not a back lot. It's in an area that's already characterized by existing residential development, and there's no natural heritage features or constraints that would inhibit the ability for this lot to be developed. And hopefully, committee will approve the applications. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak to this application? Anyone online that would like to speak to this application?
Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Thank you. Council member, comments or questions? All right. The resolution is exactly as it is in your package, so I am not going to read it. All in favor? And that carries. Kelsey, you can go on. You're doing the Henry Street application.
Yes, thank you. Through you, the subject property is located at 19 Henry Street. The property is within the urban residential low density precinct with natural constraint to overlay within a very small portion, and is within the urban residential designation. The applicant is proposing to establish a day nursery within an existing single detached dwelling on the property. Because day nursery is only permitted as an accessory use within the UR1 precinct and is not permitted as a primary use, an addendum to the community planning permit is required to allow the day nursery use to operate as the principal use on the property. The application also seeks to recognize site-specific conditions necessary for the day nursery to function safely and efficiently, including the location and size of parking areas and visibility requirements at the intersection. So you can see the reliefs on the screen in front of you, but the proposal includes modifying the parking area along Henry Street. So you can see the black areas are where they're extending the parking to meet the requirements, meet some of the requirements. The existing gravel parking area already sits 0.1 meters from the street line, which does not comply with the 3-meter setback in the bylaw. Because the dwelling location constrains any further shift of the parking area, this relief is needed to maintain the existing setback while expanding the parking area to accommodate staff and short-term parent and guardian parking. Please note that the correct number is now noted in the report. It was noted as 1.5, and there was just a misunderstanding about that number, but it was shown correctly on the site plan, and it is 0.1. This change just requires an amendment in the resolution, but it doesn't change staff's recommendation or analysis. The visibility triangle, which is normally requires 9 meter measurements along the intersecting road, is also reduced to 3 meters to accommodate the required parking. So you can see this triangular space here, and it's required for corner lots just to make sure there's visibility. The traffic letter prepared by JD Northcott Engineering concludes that the reduced visibility triangle is appropriate given the slow speeds at the intersection and the nature of the local neighborhood traffic, and the sight lines will remain adequate. Vegetation in the visibility triangle will be trimmed or removed to improve conditions as well. The application also requests a reduction in the minimum parking requirement from 8 to 7, as well as a reduction in the number of spaces that have 3 meters in width. These modifications are needed due to the limited size of the parcel and the configuration of the dwelling and the yard. The traffic letter indicates that the parking demand for the day nursery will cycle throughout the day, with brief periods, peak periods during quick pickup and drop off, and that parking supply is adequate for the intended use. Under the official plan, day nurseries are considered small-scale convenience commercial, where they serve the immediate residential neighborhood. These uses may be permitted within the urban residential designation when they maintain neighborhood character and are located on streets with sufficient capacity and meet the community planning permit requirements for parking, access, setback, and buffering. In this instance, the day nursery would retain the residential appearance as it would stay looking like a house and preserve the overall character of the neighborhood. The traffic letter confirms that the surrounding streets can operate below capacity and can comfortably accommodate the traffic generated for the day nursery. To minimize impacts to the surrounding residential use, the applicant also proposes fencing around the yard to buffer outdoor play areas, which will be used only during daytime hours. To address operational concerns, drop-off and pickup activities will be managed through procedures during to ensure that vehicles will not queue on the adjacent streets. 9 staff members are expected to be on site. However, not all will require parking, and on-site parking will be available for staff overflow, on-street parking, sorry. An addendum to the traffic letter is required prior to permit issuance for the community planning permit, which will provide additional detail on operational procedure, staff parking requirements, and traffic management for the day nursery. This has been added to the site-specific exception and will be to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services. The application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act, and comments were provided, and there was one comment received after the agenda posting. It concerned drainage, vegetation removal, snow removal, and fencing. Staff had reviewed these comments and are confident that they can be addressed and implemented through the community planning permit. As noted before, we are requesting an addendum to the traffic letter, and this arose from operations comments about the parking, pickup and drop off and staff parking volumes. So those we also hope to address through the CPP through that addendum. Through staff's review and analysis, the application appears to conform with the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial planning statement. The requested release are appropriate given the existing site constraints, the nature of the proposed use, and the finding of the supporting technical studies. Staff are recommending approval of the amendment, subject to the requirement for addendum to the traffic letter. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'll call on the applicant or the representative to make any comments. Don't want to make any comments. All right, cool. I love that. Any members of the public that would like to speak to this application? I see no hands here. Anyone watching online, you'd need to raise your electronic hand if you'd like to speak to it.
Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Thank you. I'll go to council members. Councilor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Stone. And I think I'm just echoing what the letter that we received about the snow removal, and those pictures that you've got right there, they show you how much snow there is going to be. So the fact that they're actually extending the parking area, that snow is going to have to go somewhere. So you're saying through the CPP, we'll be able to actually, they'll be able to get rid of that snow. Thank you.
Kelsey, great question.
Yeah, if I could just respond through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the parking, the snow removal from the parking area, we'll hope to see on this community planning, the site plan for the community planning permit, just to see there's sufficient room. And I was also concerned going to site that would be an issue, but I also turned onto the road from Henry Street and there's good visibility, but that will definitely be something we consider in the community planning permit review.
Thank you.
All right, I see no more hands. I have an amendment to the resolution as Kelsey discussed. Simply changing the number of 1.5 meters to 1 meter. So I'll need a mover and a seconder. Okay. Moved by Mayor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Be it resolved that the number 1.5 meters in the item 2 be struck out and replaced with the number 0.1 meter. All in favor? And that carries. And now I'll call the main motion as amended. All in favor? And that carries as well. All right. Thank you, Kelsey. Lisa is coming up to speak to the Rowanwood application.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and through you, the subject property for this application is 343 Rowanwood Road. The property is within the rural designation in the official plan and the rural RU precinct in the community planning permit bylaw with natural constraints 1 and 2 overlays indicating a wetland and steep slopes. There's also an unevaluated stream on the property, and the property is accessed via Rowanwood Road, which is a year-round municipally maintained local road. The purpose and effect of this application is to change the precinct on a portion of the lands from a rural RU precinct to a rural residential with exception, RR exception precinct, to permit the creation of 3 new rural residential lots. So those are the 3 along the north at the top there. Each having approximately 100 meters of frontage on Rowanwood Road and an area of approximately 2 hectares, which would be created as a result of consent applications B33 through B35, 2025. The retained lot would have approximately 99.5 meters of frontage on Rowanwood Road and an area of approximately 33 hectares. Staff are also recommending the precinct be changed on a portion of the lands from rural RU to conservation C precinct to protect an unevaluated stream. So that's showing kind of in the middle of the property there, and a wetland, which is just below the stream. The proposed severed and retained lots would not meet the requirements of the rural precinct for frontage and area, so an amendment is required to facilitate their creation. The new lots would exceed the minimum frontage and area requirements of the new alternative rural residential lot standards, however, and the exception is recommended to ensure the lots are developed in accordance with the additional provisions for alternative rural residential lots, including the requirement that a community planning permit be issued to enforce those standards. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and the Community Planning Permit Bylaw. District comments were received and included as attachment number 4. No concerns or objections have been received. Given the analysis of the town's policy and the proposal, the application appears to conform with the official plan and the provincial planning statement, and as such, staff are recommending approval. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have, and on the screen now are just some pictures of the lands in the front portion of the lot, which are pretty uniformly flat and currently vegetated with mature trees.
Thank you very much. I'll call on the applicant or the representative to make any comments. Welcome, sir.
Savis Radis, Plan Muskoka, P.O. Box 5384, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H2K7. I'm here this afternoon representing the applicants as their agent and registered professional planner. I've read the staff report, listened to the presentation, and I think it accurately describes the application. And I agree with the recommendation for approval and the conditions that have been outlaid. The purpose behind this application, obviously for the creation of new lots in a rural area, was derived from the fact that there's enough frontage along the top end of the property to allow for 4 lots to be created, which is the 3 additional lots that the official plan would allow as a maximum to be created from a land holding. So they approached it from that perspective and reduced the lot frontage for the proposed lots to less than what would normally be required, but meeting and exceeding the requirements of the rural alternative standards. So what you see is 4 lots that are well in context in the area. There's a lot of smaller lots surrounding the property and in the general context of the neighborhood, and these lots would not by any means stick out or be out of place in that context. And finally, the lots are suitable for development, and the only natural constraints that we found are being zoned for conservation use to be protected in the long term. So I would be happy to answer any questions, though, that the council may have. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much. Is there any member of the public present that would like to speak to the application? Not very chatty, this group. Anyone online that would like to speak to it, raise your electronic hand.
Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I'm happy to see that our rural alternative is providing some options to create some more reasonable opportunities in our community. Rowanwood, that is an excellent opportunity for people to build a little bit more community. There's some housing there on similar sized lots, smaller lots. But I think this should provide an opportunity to create more of a neighborhood. And I think it's great.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? I see none. So the resolution is, I'll read this short one. Moved by Councilor Schumacher, seconded by Councilor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that Planning Council approve Community Plan and Permit Bylaw Amendment CPPA 39/2025 HTE. The purpose and effect of which is to change the precinct on a portion of the subject lands from a rural precinct to a rural residential with exception precinct and a conservation precinct, with the exception being to recognize that the alternative rural residential lot standards by the bylaw shall apply to the lot, all to permit the creation of 3 rural residential lots. All in favor? And that carries. All right, moving right along. Madeline, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, and through you, Chair Stone, the subject property is located at 422 Canal Road. The lot is designated rural and waterfront in Huntsville's official plan and is under the waterfront backlot precinct with the Natural Constraints 2 overlay in the Community Planning Permit bylaw. A community planning permit bylaw amendment application was submitted to change the precinct on the lands from a waterfront backlot precinct to a waterfront backlot with exception X precinct shown in yellow, to recognize the frontage along Canal Road, and also to a rural residential with exception Y precinct shown in blue to apply the alternative rural residential lot standards of the bylaw. So a concurrent consent application was also submitted for the creation of one new rural residential lot, and that is shown in blue. So the severed lot is proposed to have an area of approximately 1 hectare with 107 meters of frontage along the year-round portion of Swallowdale Road. And the retained lot is proposed to have an area of approximately 6.9 hectares with 10 meters of frontage along Canal Road and is developed with a single detached dwelling, barn, and various accessory structures. So the property as it currently is has 3 touch points, I'll call them. One is this area here along Canal Road, so that's the existing access onto the property, and that would serve the retained lot, and that's where the 10 meters of frontage needs to be recognized. Then if we move down to this area here, this is the year-round portion of Swallowdale Road, and the property currently has 107 meters of property boundary along this portion, and that will end up being the frontage of the severed lot. And then along this property line here, we have about 190 meters, and this is the private portion of Swallowdale Road. So because this is not a year-round road, this can't be considered the frontage for the retained lot. So that's where recognition of this 10 meters along Canal Road comes into play. So just wanted to give some context there. I'll keep it really brief because everything's essentially outlined in the report package, but this proposal is a great representation of the alternative rural residential lot standards. It's exceeding the required frontage, but the area is right at that required standard. The severed lot has already established mature vegetation along the frontage. It's also an area with a little bit of sloping, although not steep sloping, but outside of the development envelope. So the actual area for development is pretty flat and looks like relatively suitable size for a single detached dwelling. So I think a really great example of those policies. And I'll just touch upon minimum distance separation because it's not something that we talk about often, but is definitely applicable. So in both the CPP, the official plan, and the provincial planning statement, when there are livestock uses on properties, we have to apply minimum distance separation formulas. And those formulas look at things like the type of livestock on a property, the quantity of the livestock, the barns and the size of those structures, and also factor in manure storage. So the province has developed this great formula guideline, and once you do the calculation, you come up with a distance standard in meters. And in this case, it was 108 meters required from the barn and manure storage for the proposed new lot. And this proposed new lot well exceeds that 108 meters. And that formula essentially is just to reduce impacts to odor and noise and possible nuisance from livestock facilities. So because there's an existing equestrian facility on the property, we wanted to make sure all of that was in compliance with those standards, and it was. So the application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. 6 letters of support were provided by neighboring property owners respecting the application. District staff also noted no concerns with the application, and through staff's review and analysis, the applications appear to meet the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial planning statement, and as such, staff are recommending approval of both the amendment and the consent application, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much. Calling the applicant or the representative to make any comments. You're good? All right. Any members of the public present that would like to speak to this application? Online, you need to raise your electronic hand.
Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Thank you very much. Counselor Morrison.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and through you. Obviously, this is a pretty easy one for me. I just want to point out some of the stuff that the Austin Creek, I'll call it a ranch, but I know there's a different name on the website, does for the public. I had the pleasure of going to visit there one day, and there was a school group there. And what I saw was nothing short of spectacular, just how the kids were interacting with the horses, what they got from it. And all you need to do is go on the website and look at the testimonials to see some kids whose lives have been changed by this type of therapy. So in the work I do in the mental health side of things with MindAid, you realize not every kid benefits from the same stuff. So having this in our town is unbelievable, and it's literally changed lives. So I'm happy that we can approve this and let it carry on, for sure.
Nice. I didn't know that. Wonderful. Any other questions? Seeing none. Moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Cluche. Be it resolved that Planning Council approve Community Planning Permit Bylaw Amendment, application CPPA 40, 2025 HTE, the purpose and effect of which is to change the precinct on the lands from waterfront backlot precinct to a waterfront backlot with an exception X precinct and a rural residential exception Y precinct to permit the creation of one new rural residential lot, with exceptions being: 1, permit a lot frontage of 10 meters along Canal Road, and 1, apply the alternative rural residential lot standards to the lot. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that carries. All right. I'm just going to read this and then we'll take a break. Now that all comments have been received, I declare these public meetings respecting the above applications to be concluded. We will now move to the non-public portion of the meeting after a 10-minute break. Thanks very much. All right, welcome back, everyone. Madeline, you can go ahead with the next application on Aspiden Road.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Stone, the subject property is located at 2251 Aspiden Road. The property is designated rural in Huntsville's official plan and is under the rural precinct with the Natural Constraints 2 overlay in the Community Planning Permit bylaw. An application has been submitted which proposes to recognize the existing use of lands, buildings, and structures on the property for Indigenous healing, cultural education, and wellness programming as a permitted accessory use, and permit the construction of a secondary residential dwelling unit and 4 private cabins on the property as part of an expansion of this use. To facilitate the proposal, a Class 3 community planning permit is required to recognize an existing accessory use of lands, buildings, and structures as similar to a home occupation. Recognize the similar use on the property with no frontage or access from a year-round maintained road. Permit the expansion of a similar use to accommodate 4 new 15 square meter private cabins and a new 55 square meter secondary residential dwelling unit to permit a maximum of 10 occupants on the site only, and permit an increase to the number of private cabins on a lot from 1 to 4. Conditions of provisional approval require the owner entering into an agreement with the town to acknowledge that access will be off of a non-year-round maintained road, that no municipal services will be available, and that the dwelling and habitable accessory structures must be fully sprinklered or include other suitable fire suppression measures to the satisfaction of the town. Additionally, conditions of final approval have been listed within the report package, and amongst the standard conditions include a condition for vegetation outside of the existing cleared areas, as illustrated on final approved plans, being retained in a natural state. The property, I'll just skip to the next slide. The property is accessed via an unopened road allowance from Aspiden Road and is currently developed with a 72 square meter single detached dwelling, which was constructed in 1992, and a 55 square meter mobile home and various accessory structures, including 2 greenhouse structures, a geodome, a utility shed, and livestock coop. The mobile home is proposed to be converted into the secondary residential dwelling unit as part of this application, and the accessory structures are noted to be used for both the primary dwelling and home occupation use. The property varies in topography, however, the existing cleared areas are flat and level, containing dense mature vegetation in the remainder of the property. The home occupation has been described by the applicant as being Bear Waters Gathering, which is noted as an Indigenous-owned education and wellness social enterprise established in May 2015 and governed by an Indigenous advisory circle of elders and knowledge sharers from across Canada, which deliver Indigenous cultural safety and anti-racism training, wellness counseling, and elder-led healing programs. As the use was established prior to the adoption of the Community Planning Permit bylaw and is now proposed to be expanded, this application proposes to recognize it. In 2025, an application was also submitted to sever an 8-hectare parcel from the north portion of the lands to permit the creation of a new rural lot intended for Indigenous ceremonial and cultural practices. Finalization of the consent application is still underway. The existing use is being recognized as a similar use to a home occupation, as it is conducted by the applicant who resides in the existing single detached dwelling and does not appear to cause any nuisance. The expansion of the use appears to be appropriate given the property's size, seclusion, and natural buffering, and the expansion of the use is to include the additional 4 private cabins to contain only sleeping accommodations and the secondary residential dwelling unit to better assist with programming. The proposed structures will meet all lot requirements respecting setbacks, coverage, and are proposed to be below the size capacity of private cabins and secondary units respectively. Further, they will be placed in existing cleared areas, leaving the remainder of the property undisturbed. And all structures will require building permits. However, it should be noted that the cabins will not be serviced. The existing septic system will be reviewed with the building department to ensure capacity is sufficient, and any necessary upgrades will be handled through Ontario Building Code requirements. The use will continue to be secondary to the property, No signage is provided at the roadside nor along Aspidin Road, and further, the use has been noted to have a maximum capacity of 10 individuals. The use of the subject lands for the proposal is in keeping with the contemplated policies of the town's official plan, including the rural designation, home-based businesses, natural heritage features, and servicing capacities. The application was circulated in accordance with the Community Planning Permit Bylaw. 3 letters of objection were received after the agenda was posted and circulated to council. Concerns include the services provided and the road allowance. These concerns have been addressed through the report, and no changes to services or road allowances providing access to the property or surrounding the property are required. And through staff's review and analysis, the application would appear to meet the intent of the applicable criteria for approval under the Community Planning Permit Bylaw and is consistent with the provincial planning statement, and therefore staff are recommending provisional approval, subject to the conditions as listed within the report. And thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or representative to make any comments. Welcome. Oh, you got to push the button. There you go.
Can you hear me now? Sego, Segwakego. Hello, everyone. Hello, relatives. Gotnikadunje Yunjats. I am water that moves continuously. I am from Oswego on my mom's side, and I'm Ilnu on my father's side. And I'm here, first of all, I have been born off the food here. I shared that last time when I met with all of you. I am very deeply connected to Muskoka and have deep, deep, deep roots here, and have no desire to interfere with. And in the decade I've lived here, have never gotten a complaint for noise, have never gotten a complaint for accessibility. We don't have a lot of intrusive features. People don't even know we exist back there. Most of the time they're like, you have a house there? You know? So really, truly, we're always about respect, first and foremost. So any complaints that come through, we take very seriously. And we will always address those complaints and concerns. I also have a fiduciary duty as an Onkwe'honwe woman that anybody who visits me will be safe. And that safety will always be my top priority. I'm a social worker. I'm a registered social worker. And the work that I do here, I have a master's degree in social work, will be covered through insurance. I'll be meeting their requirements, which are pretty stringent on fire code. The buildings that we plan on having will be up to code. So they'll be there. They're not just thrown together. They'll be quite carefully put together and considered. This is something I take pride in. Elders will be visiting. I have a community responsibility to them to ensure that they're coming to a place that's safe and secure and that they have the support and access to emergency services. So I intend to have the vehicles that I need, that if we ever have a 5-foot snow again, I already have a 2850 Massey Ferguson on the land, so I'm the one that maintains that road. I take very good care of that road and the land. The vegetation there will not be disturbed at any major portion, maybe a few trees. We've already, we put our tobacco down. We have a relationship with those trees. We take it very seriously if we have to interfere with them or disturb them, so we won't if we don't have to. We've also hired someone to come in recently and do an environmental look at impact, not just on trees, but also on the habitats that are there, on the water flow, on everything, to see, like, are we making a good choice? And so he's very, very skilled in this area. His name is Chad, and Chad has been a volunteer for us for over 5 years, and has helped us with what trees are safe, what trees aren't safe, what limbs need to come down to ensure safety. So we are very comprehensive in the assessment that we've done as to where and how to do this. So I just wanted to share that with you. Also, as far as sanitation, we will likely look into that more seriously. Thank you for mentioning that. And we'll work with the town cooperatively in any kind of concerns that are raised. We also need to be concerned about that. We definitely don't want to have an odor or concern about any sanitation concerns as well as garbage. We have a plan. We do get rid of garbage weekly. We do have a locked shed because we do have a very special bear that comes to visit us once in a while. So we are aware of bear safety. Every cabin will have fire safety, will have everything up to code. They will have a fire extinguisher. They will have bear spray. They will have everything that they need to be safe. So I just wanted to let you know that we're, and I'm just thinking about addressing any other concerns. I understand as Ongwehongwe people that a lot of people don't know who we are or what we do, and they don't understand our practices, and that can become very fear-provoking. The people who are visiting are very wonderful human beings, and we're here to support everyone, and it's not just for Ongwehongwe people, it's for everyone. So just wanted to share that with you, that any healing practices that we do will be for everyone, not just Indigenous people. So thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Very interesting application for sure. I noticed we never got any mapping of where the cabins were going to go. I do appreciate you speaking about sanitation or septic system. Madeline, can you tell me how we're going to ensure that that is done properly?
Thank you. Through you, Chair Stone. If it's helpful, we can pull up the site plan drawing that shows the general location of the cabins. Sorry, I can zoom into it just to point them out. In terms of septic, so it was noted that the existing septic would be utilized, that no additional sanitary facilities are provided within each cabin. So if the existing septic doesn't have capacity, then there would be requirements to expand that existing system. And further than that, I might have to defer to the owner. But that's, as far as I know, that's.
If you have anything to add, I don't know.
I think we'll just cooperate and decide on how that looks as far as septic is concerned. I have thought about, do we build some kind of separate system? And I'm more than open to looking at that. Absolutely. If necessary, absolutely. Like, we just want everything to be okay.
I trust the building department will ensure
I'm
that.
sure they'll instruct me on what they feel is necessary, and I'll look into it myself too.
Right.
Thank
Thanks.
you so
Madeline?
much.
Thank you, Chair Stone. That's what I was going to add, was the septic permit would be required with our building department. So they'll ensure that the existing septic, what the capacity is there, and if there's any additional requirements, it'll all be handled through a building permit.
Perfect. Thanks.
And then, sorry, just further to identify the location of the cabins. So the X's shown are the 4 locations of the cabins, and the purple rectangle kind of in the top right corner of the circle is the existing dwelling, I believe. Let me see.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. No problem. All right. Council, any other comments or questions? Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair Stone. Very quickly, that might have been another report, might have missed it. Is this just going to be a seasonal cabins, or are they for year-round use?
We're hoping for year-round, such as like March, we have Wata ceremony. So it's important that we have places for them to stay that are safe and welcoming. And I think that it's difficult for our elders and community members to go to hotels at times. So we've decided to assist them in that area. So we're hoping for year-round. I think initially we'll start with seasonal to see how that goes. And it will address the issues as they come up, if anything comes up. But they'll be constructed for year-round, so they'll be quite warm.
Great. I see no other hands. So the resolution is quite lengthy, so I'm not going to read it. It is exactly as it's shown in your package. So all in favor? And that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
We wish you well. Excellent. All right. Kelsey's coming back to speak to the Collins application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the property is located at 791 Greer Road. The property is within the rural residential precinct with a site-specific exception RR 0526 and is within the rural designation of the official plan. The subject lands were part of a previous set of applications done in 2022, where a zoning amendment and 3 consents resulted in the creation of 3 lots. So these lots are here, here, and then the one that the subject lands that we're looking at today. And these are all rural residential lots that are immediately north of the property. At this time, the site-specific rural residential exception is still applied to these lands, with recommendations for the noise and vibration impact assessment and the scoped environmental impact assessment and wildland fire assessment that were done at that time. A wetland and its 30-meter buffer were placed under a conservation precinct, and this setback was later reduced to 15 meters through minor variance A36 2022. So the red is the severed, and the retained is the green. So the severed is proposed to have 60 meters of frontage and 1 hectare, and the severed is retained to have 76 meters of frontage and 2.5 hectares in area. The current application is to create 1 additional lot, which triggers a new review of the environmental constraints present on site. Staff requested an addendum to the 2022 environmental impact statement to confirm whether the reduced 15 meters wetland buffer remained appropriate for the additional lot creation. However, no addendum was submitted. Similar updates were asked for the wildland fire assessment and the noise and vibration. Even though the new lot would introduce new development, these assessments were not provided. Under the Town of Huntsville official plan, lands in the rural designation are expected to be developed in very low densities, with development occupying a small portion of each of the lot, with private services being required. Rural residential lots are anticipated to be large lots that maintain rural character and protect natural features. The standards are 2 hectares with 34 meters of frontage, although alternative rural lot standards allow for 1 hectare and 60 meters of frontage in certain circumstances. These situations require confirmation that the lots are appropriately serviced, that natural features can be protected through proper buffers, and that the lots can accommodate development envelopes that meet all the required setbacks. The current submission did not demonstrate compliance with these standards, as no updated environmental review or site analysis was provided to confirm that the required buffers and development envelopes can adequately be achieved given the features on the lot. Additionally, section 8.75 of the official plan places a cap on 3 new rural residential lots that may be severed from an existing lot of record from within a rural area. This policy is intended to protect rural character, discourage urban development, and direct growth towards serviced settlement areas. In this instance, 3 lots were created in 2022, and the proposed lot would create a 4th lot, thereby exceeding the permitted maximum and contributing to development patterns that the official plan seeks to avoid. As noted, the subject lands contain wetlands at the back and an unidentified watercourse, and there's still high wildland fire hazard. As noted, the EIS provided direction for these features back in 2022. However, the best practice is that these be re-reviewed, as they weren't conceptualizing on this additional lot or additional development. And the lands are also in an influence area for the budding aggregate operation and within 200 meters of the Trans-Canada Pipeline Corridor. And some of these reviews were conducted in 2022 as well, but no updates to address this new lot. Although we did receive comments from the Trans-Canada Pipeline, which just provided guidelines for development in proximity to that feature. The application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act, and 1 objection was received following the agenda posting. The objection discussed the proposed severance not being in character with the rural area, and it creating further fragmentation that impacts their property. Through staff's review and analysis, the application does not appear to meet the intent of the official plan or be consistent with the provincial planning statement. The proposal exceeds the number of permitted rural residential lots that may be created from a single lot, and there is insufficient updated technical information to demonstrate that the natural heritage features can be protected with the additional lot. For these reasons, staff are recommending denial, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or representative to make any comments. Welcome. Oh, you're already on. You're good.
Testing, okay, okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. And thank you for your service. I don't envy your jobs, and I respect your patience. However, the application I have here is, as Kelsey has said, is for a new lot under the alternative rural residential lot standards, which I think is going to create quite a lot of activity in your jurisdictions. This new lot complies with the new standards, which has approximately 197 feet of frontage and 2.5 acres of area. And excuse me for using the old terminology because I'm old school. The retained lot has about 250 feet of frontage and 6 acres of lawn of land. It's located on Highway 11, or just outside of Highway 11 and Greer Road, so it's close to Huntsville, Port Sydney, Bracebridge, and is an ideal location for a residential lot. There are residents on all sides of the property, so it fits in with the neighborhood. Requirements for the application includes a pre-consult, which has been done, updated concept sketch, which has been done, a commissioned application, which has been done, a parcel registration, which has been done, and noise vibration study, and a scope environmental impact study. There's a noise and vibration study, which is relatively current. Nothing has changed. And here is the scoped environmental impact study. And both of these studies have covered the whole of the properties, and there's absolutely no reason that they have to be revisited. That's my opinion. Anyway. And by the way, those studies have been accepted by planning staff. The impact of the existing development of existing developments on this property will be minimal, and if there is an impact from those developments, that will have been looked after by your building department. So I think this is a great opportunity to create another lot. The land is flat. It's basically sandy soil. There's some lovely pines on it. It's nicely treed, and it'll make a great additional lot for the municipality. Now, before I get the hook, I would like to commend Councillor Morrison for his attempt to streamline the planning process, because I was involved in a subdivision in the Port Sydney area, which between the district and the town has taken the best part of 8 years to get approval. That's unreasonable. And I'm sure the planning staff in town could have handled this project nicely, because we weren't asking for any exceptions from anything. And as a result of bouncing from the district, which spent most of their time, to the town, which I must say, tried to expedite the process. When it finally got there, it took, as they say, maybe 8 years, or if not the better part of 8 years. So thank you. So streamline it, please. So I'll open it to questions.
Thank you very much. Council, comments or questions? Actually, I'm going to ask Kelsey, can you show, like I asked on the phone, can we see a better drawing of where the existing dwelling is and where the potential one will go?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe I had that ready to be displayed on the screen. Just in the folder, the image. Okay, sorry, it's a bit, I'll try to do my zooming. So this is the proposed severed lot. So you can see the blue outline and the proposed retained lands. And then above it to the north, there's a lot. And the development's approximately in that yellow square. Because of the wetland, and you can kind of see that white portion that shows where the wetland lies. That lot was constrained to being only developed to the south side. So the development of the severed lot will be relatively close to that northern lot. So that's the general location.
And I believe Mr. Collins said where he anticipates the building envelope would go for the new dwelling?
Yes, following the agenda being posted, Mr. Collins sent me an email with a sketch that wasn't originally shown where the development envelope, and that was in everybody's email to show the rough location of the development envelope, yes.
All right, I'll go to Council Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Chair Stone. Have we determined that we're meeting the front setback and side yard setback and the 15-meter setback from the conservation?
Thank you for the question. So in the original submission, there was no development envelope provided. Mr. Collins has provided a development envelope. It doesn't show the exact distances, so I can't confirm, but the lot is 1 hectare, so maybe Mr. Collins would know if there's adequate space.
I did in fact provide the updated concept sketch, and maybe it went astray somewhere, but with the 2.5 acres and the frontage available, there's lots of room, and I've shown the sketch, and as Kelsey says, I guess everybody had it in their email. And there's lots of setbacks with that kind of area.
Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Stone. So I'm looking at the plan for the proposed building envelope. And am I correct? Is it well outside of the buffer, the setback to the wetland?
So it appears that it's out of the 15-meter buffer that was established in the minor variance in 2022. But part of our concern was, given that these other lots have now been developed, has there been any impact to this wetland? Is that 15-meter buffer still appropriate? There might still be room, but that was an outstanding question that we had. Is 15 meters still okay? Yeah, that was outstanding.
Thank you for that. So I guess my question to Mr. Collins is, if this was an issue that potentially causes some concern for our staff, just to Kelsey's point, would he consider updating the EIS to deal with this particular proposal?
I'm sorry, to update?
Update the environmental study.
The environmental study has been done.
And
It's here. It's here. there is a very, very small portion, maybe 1% of this lot that has a wetland designation. So the studies have been done. They're here. If you, have they been accepted by the planning staff?
And last update on that is, when were they done, and were they done before any other development happened on this particular property?
They were done before. And there was some suggestion that the development of the existing properties might impact on this property. But the building department looks after that. You can rest assured that the building department will make sure that there's no drainage or anything going from one lot to the other, and the setbacks are large enough that there's no impact from one property to the other.
Okay.
Kelsey, you have something to add?
Yeah, just to clarify, the site-specific exception that was applied to each of these lots required each lot at the time to have a site plan, now a community planning permit. So it's actually the planning department that reviews the setback. And the studies were done in 2022 prior to any development happening. And yeah, the best practice, as I noted in my presentation, is that because the original study didn't contemplate this fourth lot, that you consider it now in the context of these lots being developed. And yeah, environmental features are dynamic, so we need to make sure that we're assessing them if there's new proposals.
Thanks. Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair Stone. I understand the environmental aspect of it, but I have a concern over the increase into 4 lots, because we actually have a policy in place that says 3 are the max. And if we vary from our own policies like this every time we change something, then that's just going to make us busier and more lots coming to us, and why'd we put a cap on it? There's a reason we put a cap on it, and it was for what I call ribbon sprawl or something like that. So for me personally, I don't think I agree with the report we have in front of us and denial.
Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thanks, Chair Stone. I see in the email that the setbacks do meet the requirements. I guess after hearing Deputy Mayor Armour's comments, I agree and I don't agree. You know, Port Sydney is a special development area, and we're growing. And I don't see this as irresponsible growth. I see this with growth that fits within the community. As far as the creation of the 4th lot, this is another example of our alternative lot standards. And to me, creating a lot is creating a lot, and I think it's going to benefit our community. The only thing I have issue with is the EIS was developed with no development on the lot, and is it still applicable? Now, I think if we went out for an EIS, that I'm pretty confident we all know what the results would be. I'm going to leave it there for now.
Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, through you, Chair Stone. I would concur with Councillor Fitzgerald. We are sort of changing, and when I look at the sort of envelope at the bottom where we look at the thing from the district, and you look at the lots across the road, the new lot is pretty much exactly, Councillor, you're going to go to exactly what I'm talking about, like 782, all of those across the road from it look exactly the same size as the new lot that we would be developing. So it's not going to be that out of character for Greer Road and Port Sydney. But I would be prepared to approve it, as much as Mr. Collins may not want to do the EIS again. I do believe we probably need that because it hasn't been, it needs to go after the development. I know we're probably going to see what we're going to see, but it is a requirement for the town. So that would be my standard.
Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Chair Stone. And it's no secret I want more rural land severances. I've made that clear. I think I'm going to bring up the same point that Councillor Schumacher did. I looked it up online, and the lots across the road are 4 in a row so 4 severances at one point, and they're 183 feet in frontage, which would be smaller than I think this one would be at the end of the day. I'm really leaning on my Port Sydney, Sisted Stevenson reps here. They represent that community. They know that community and what it needs. Knowing that they would be in favor, I'd very much be in favor of it as well.
Councillor Fitzgerald?
Just one last point. The district did have no objections to this application.
Again, just a comment in favor. I mean, we did just have a big, lovely celebration in Port Sydney about the hospitals, and talking to people who work at both locations. This is ideal spots. I know that if you are a tech, you have to be 20 minutes between each hospital. So we are looking at, as we look at expansion of the hospital, that area is going to be key for development, because we are going to need staff that are going to live and be able to access both hospitals. So having available lot and lot space is something we're going to need in that area.
Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair Stone. Just very quickly, you know, we develop these things and we have policies and we go back and we fight back and forth, or we discuss things back and forth about policies and what we should have and what's best for our community. And then when our staff works so hard to bring something to us that fits the policies that we've sent them away with, we deny them or we go against them. So we put policies in place for a reason, and that's why this one was denied, because it didn't fit the policies.
You again.
I guess this is a question for Kelsey. If you had an updated EIS, would your deny change to an approval if the EIS came back positive?
Kelsey?
Thank you for the question, through you, Mr. Chair. So it wouldn't like that policy about the 3 lots is pretty strict, so it wouldn't change our recommendation. But I guess it would, if you were to not to view the application favorably, it would give, if you were to implement development there, it would make sure that it proceeded in a safe and environmentally sensitive way.
All right. Well, I'm hearing 2 different things. We had another application earlier today that wanted more lots, and they were limited to severing 3 lots. So I do agree with the policies we've set. However, I'm hearing around the table there might be appetite for an approval of this. So I will put it to council. Is there an appetite to amend this motion to deny? Councillor Morrison.
Yeah, I'll put it forward a motion to amend, and definitely don't want to go against staff. And I agree with Deputy Mayor Armour, policies are there for a reason, but I think sometimes, just like the height we were looking at earlier, we're amending when the decision is the right decision to make. And I think maybe it involves us looking at that policy. When it was made, it was a different time, you know, and we're here looking at a lot in Port Sydney that could service, like Councillor Schumacher said, not just for medical workers, but people that wife works in Huntsville, husband works in Bracebridge, or kids get a job wherever. I worked in St. Anne's Village when I worked in Port Sydney. So having more lots down there that can spend money in Port Sydney businesses, I think that the climate has changed to when that policy was written. So I think maybe we can put that on the table for a discussion at some point.
All right. So if you're moving a substitution, do you have a seconder? Okay.
I will second, but I am going to put in for the EIS that staff want.
All right. All right, council, I do have a motion to substitute. And if you wanted to add something onto this, then we could at the time. So I'm going to read this to you now. Moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Be it resolved that the following word deny be struck out and the words provisionally approve be inserted in its place. And further that the following conditions be added. A registerable description of the severed lot being submitted to the town, including all rights of ways and easements, along with a registered copy of the reference plan. The owner's taxes being in good standing. Site inspection fee of $281 being paid to the town of Huntsville. Consent finalization fee in the amount of $258 being paid to the town of Huntsville. 5% cash in lieu of parkland being paid to the town of Huntsville on the severed lands. The owner entering into and registering on title an agreement with the town of Huntsville pursuant to Section 5126 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended, respecting A, the implementation of development conditions as outlined by the TransCanada Pipelines Limited comments, February 9, 2026, and B, the implementation of alternative rural lot standards through the community planning permit. So that is a proposed amendment, and I'll go to Councillor Fitzgerald.
I just want to catch you before you call the question, Councillor Stone, or there's something added to the amendment. The rule of three will definitely change by someone sitting around this council table now in the next 2 terms or 3 terms. So everyone keep that in mind as well.
Is
Councillor Schumacher, sorry.
Is staff okay with that? Did you want the EIS in there? Because I'm prepared to put it in there, and I know Mr. Collins doesn't really want to do another one, but I believe I have some people who are willing to vote with me on this approval if that is in there. Possibly.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I think we would need time just to figure out how best to add it into this substitution, if that would be
All
acceptable.
right, so we're going to take a 5-minute break.
Yeah, want to change it?
All right. So, welcome back, everyone. I'm not going to read it from the very beginning, but I'm going to start at number 6, which is new, and then a number 7. You've heard the 1 to 5 already. So number 6, the owner submitting a scoped environmental impact study prepared by a qualified professional to the satisfaction of the town, demonstrating that they will be, or that he? That there will be no negative impact to natural heritage features and functions resulting from the development of a new rural residential lot, and recommending mitigation measures as necessary to be implemented through a community planning permit. Number 7, the owner entering into and registering on title an agreement with the town of Huntsville pursuant to section 5126 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended, respecting A, implementation of development conditions as outlined by TransCanada Pipelines Limited, comments February 9, 2026, implementation of alternative rural residential lot standards through the community planning permit, and C, the implementation of any recommendations from the environmental impact assessment. Are there any comments or questions on this amendment? Seeing none. All in favor? All right, that carries. And the main motion as amended, all in favor? And that carries. Thank you. That took a lot of work.
I take I didn't get a chance to vote.
Okay. Kelsey, the application on Highway 141.
Okay, thank you again, Mr. Chair. Through you, the subject property is located at 1317 Highway 141. The property is within the rural designation of the official plan, and the property is within the flood zone, rural precinct, with site-specific exception, rural 1156, with natural constraint 1 and 2 and flood overlays. The applicant is proposing to create a new rural residential lot. To facilitate this, an amendment is required, as well as a consent application. So this application is back in front of you. It was from December's meeting. The severed lot would have an area of approximately 3 hectares with 198.3 meters of frontage on Highway 141. And the retained lot would have an area of approximately 18.5 hectares with 12 meters of frontage on Highway 141. Access to both parcels is proposed to occur through the shared mutual access entrance, which also requires a right-of-way over the retained lands in favor of the severed parcel. Oops. These applications, as I noted, were at the December 3rd Planning Council meeting, and Council identified outstanding concerns related to comments from MTO and the environmental consideration involving the wetland area on the property and the property owner's proximity, the proximity of the conservation zone to the existing dwelling. Following that meeting, the applicant engaged in additional consultation with MTO and worked with town staff to refine the conservation precinct boundary around the wetland areas. MTO has since confirmed that the proposed 12-meter frontage of the retained lands can be supported, provided several conditions are met. These conditions include the submission of a draft plan for review and final approval prior to registration, the issuance of a new entrance permit for shared access. With these measures in place, MTO has indicated that the proposed frontage is sufficient, and the requirements would satisfy the requirements and would not hinder the operation of Highway 141. Based on this confirmation, staff have concluded that the frontage complies with the official plan, given that MTO is now satisfied. Regarding the environmental considerations, the property contains wetlands that must be protected from development. These areas require 30-meter buffers between the edge of the features and any site alterations. Staff initially recommended that the wetlands be placed within the conservation precinct to ensure proper protection. The applicant subsequently worked with staff to develop a refined precinct boundary that maintains the required 30-meter buffer around the most parts of the wetland while accommodating the existing dwelling, which is located in the typical setback. With this revised approach, staff are now satisfied that the proposal addresses the wetland policies within the official plan. As noted in the previous report, the property is adjacent to Patterson Quarry. A noise and vibration study was prepared by GHD and in support of the application. The study concluded that the proposed severance and continued residential use of the property can occur without incurring adverse impacts, provided recommended setbacks are implemented. While the official plan emphasizes the importance of protecting long-term viability of existing and potential aggregate resources, staff are satisfied that the technical work demonstrates the proposed lot creation will not hinder the quarry's current operation or its potential expansion. As a result, the application is considered compatible with the surrounding land uses. In summary, staff have concluded the applications meet the intent of the official plan and the provincial planning statement, and therefore are now recommending approval of the amendment and provisional approval of the consent. Thank you very much, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. I'll call on the applicant or the representative to make any comment. Good afternoon.
Graham Heisinger, Tulloch Engineering, 80 Main Street West, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H1W9. Here on behalf of Mr. Marchildon, who's in attendance as well. I'd like to thank staff for working with us to get this back to you at what I would describe as lightning speed in the planning world. Two months, and there were the holidays in there. That's great. And dealing with the MTO as well. So, and I'm also quite pleased after working with staff that we now have a recommendation for approval for the precinct amendment and a provisional approval for the consent. So I think we've collaborated there and come up with a solution that benefits everyone. The conservation precinct, of course, will be applied to the wetland feature, and I'd say 98% of the 30-meter buffer that would normally be applied. Just done so in a way that won't prejudice Mr. Marchildon's existing house, which of course was built legally with permits through the town, and any future potential additions or development to that house. We had discussions with Kelsey, and those additions would be proceeding further away from that feature than the existing house is. So from a planning perspective, I'm quite satisfied that there's no negative environmental impacts to that feature that will arise from that dwelling location. And as for the MTO, we both Kelsey and I did reach out to a member of the MTO who had provided comments ahead of the initial public meeting, clarified the standards that were initially being requested for that 40-meter minimum frontage requirement. And once that person had been provided with some additional context to the application, how this was going to be a shared entrance over an existing driveway, it was concluded that that was an acceptable scenario, and that 40-meter minimum was waived in that instance. So that's also great to hear. Good collaboration all around. So we're back here today respectfully asking for approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions that council might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Council members, comments or questions? I'm not seeing any. So moved by Councilor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councilor Schumacher, and the resolution is exactly as it is in your package. So I'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries. All right. One more. Whenever you're ready, Richard. No rush.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chair. The subject lands are located at 464 Springfield Road, and they front onto Ferry Lake. So the lot is within the flood zone precinct under the Community Planning Permit Bylaw, and it's within the flood zone overlay. Additionally, the lands are designated waterfront in the official plan. The flood zone precinct is for properties that are located within flood hazard areas around lakes and watercourses. Lands that are within this precinct are also within the flood zone overlay, which is a general constraint layer that applies to floodplain management policies to lands that are identified as flood hazards, regardless of the underlying precinct. So included in the flood zone overlay are any lands containing flooding hazards as identified in technical reports prepared by qualified professionals in accordance with provincial floodplain mapping guidelines. And this includes the floodplain mapping prepared for the District of Muskoka by Hatch Engineering under the Integrated Watershed Management Initiative. As you can see, this property is relatively small, and I'll just go back to the aerial, with an approximate area of 2,000 square meters, and 45 meters of frontage on Ferry Lake. The property is also, and you can kind of see it on this LiDAR mapping, it's also very low-lying in relation to the lake, hence its flood-prone nature. On screen is the floodplain mapping created by the district for the district by Hatch. And this mapping is for Ferry Lake in the vicinity of the property. And it's layered over top of the LiDAR mapping, as you can see. Because the lands are so low, they're located entirely within the floodplain for Ferry Lake. Map 14 in the Hatch floodplain mapping for Ferry Lake shows the lands. The mapping states that the static flood elevation for Ferry Lake, based on a 100-year storm, is 285.29 meters above sea level. And I don't know if I can show you where it says that. I don't know if you can see right there. It gives the static flood elevation for this part of Ferry Lake. In consideration of wave run-up, which has been historically calculated by MNRF as being 1.24 meters for Ferry Lake, the regulatory flood elevation for Ferry Lake is 286.53 meters above mean sea level. So we have a static flood elevation and we have a regulatory flood elevation which incorporates the wave run-up. According to the Huntsville official plan, the District of Muskoka official plan, the Community Planning Permit Bylaw, and the Provincial Planning Statement, no development is permitted on lands that are subject to such flooding hazards. Ultimately, the intent of floodplain management policies and development prohibitions is to protect life and property from risks associated with flooding hazards by limiting development in inappropriate locations that are either subject to flooding or rendered inaccessible under flooding conditions. Flooding can be life-threatening, can cause extensive personal property damage, and can have a tremendous fiscal impact, both from an emergency response perspective and also from a recovery perspective. These risks and the associated costs are beginning to mount with the increased frequency of extreme weather events relating to climate change. In this context, it's considered generally inappropriate to continue to exacerbate this risk by permitting additional development in flood-prone areas. Notwithstanding this, some minor development is permitted on existing development lots, provided it's modest in scale and nature, and it's appropriately demonstrated that all safety, floodproofing, access, and environmental concerns are addressed. In such instances, applicants are required to provide confirmation in the form of a technical study prepared by a qualified professional demonstrating that these matters are addressed. Such technical studies should also accurately delineate the hazards on the site using geodetic survey information. So the property was surveyed in support of this application, and geodetic geodetic elevations were collected. So as you can see, the lands are currently developed with 2 one-story cottages, 3 sheds, a shower enclosure, and a dock. And according to the geodetic survey work completed, elevations vary from 284 meters above mean sea level along the shore to 284.6 meters above mean sea level along the southeast corner of the property. This means the lot ranges from being between 2.53 meters to 1.93 meters below the regulatory flood elevation for Fairy Lake, or between 1.29 meters to 0.69 meters below what's called the static flood elevation for Fairy Lake. It should be noted that all buildings and structures except for the dock are considered part of a legal non-conforming use established on the property. Existing cottages and detached accessory structures, and the reason it's non-conforming is the structures and buildings are too close to the lake, they encroach within yard requirements, and they're entirely prone to flooding. Additionally, there's currently no septic system on the property, only a holding tank. So to help facilitate the sale of the property, the applicant has advanced this application to determine the feasibility of the property's redevelopment. The proposal is to demolish all the separate structures and buildings and replace them with one new 2-story single detached dwelling with attached decks, serviced by an enhanced sewage treatment system, a septic system. The new dwelling is proposed to be flood-proof to address flooding risks, with all habitable space being located on the main and second floors above a geodetic elevation 287.45 meters above mean sea level. So well above the both the static elevation and the regulatory flood elevation. A wet flood-proof non-habitable basement garage, including utility room, is proposed below this elevation, and this level of the building is intended to permit flooding to help the building withstand hydrostatic forces during a flood event. Additionally, all electrical and utilities will be located above the flood elevation. The ground floor area of the single detached dwelling is proposed to be 155.5 meters squared, and the attached ground and second floor decks are supposed to be 54.6 square meters and 26.5 square meters respectively. A number of reliefs have been requested to accommodate the proposed dwelling, and this is primarily due to the flood-prone lands on the lot, its small size, natural features and constraints, and the fact that existing buildings and structures are part of a legal non-conforming use. So I won't read all of them, but they deal with all of those matters. I should note, however, that in the staff report, in the recommendation, it only deals with 7, but, oh, I don't need to highlight that. You guys don't need glasses. I need glasses. In the report, it only deals with 7 reliefs, but I did, when I was reviewing it, I did notice that coverage is slightly increasing beyond the 10% allowed, so they would also need to increase the maximum permitted lot coverage slightly to accommodate this development. So I've listed it here, and if council views this application favorably, I have obviously a resolution ready to go with that relief also added. So to help support the development and demonstrate that the nature of the development is minor and could meet applicable floodplain management criteria, staff requested that additional information be provided in the form of a technical report prepared by a qualified professional. The report and an addendum were prepared by Duke Engineering and submitted to staff as part of this application. A scoped environmental impact study was also requested in support of the proposal, but was not provided. Staff note that there will be substantial grade alterations needed to accommodate the proposed floodproofing and improved septic system design, As such, it is recommended that a scoped study be required to address potential environmental impacts resulting from this work. And just to illustrate that, so you do see on this plan that there's a dwelling, but you really can't see, but they did provide information that there is also substantial grading and grade alterations needed to establish enough room for a septic system, and also to establish the floodproofing proposed. So we did think that environmental work would be necessary. In considering this application, it's staff's opinion that some aspects of the proposed development are appropriate for the lands. So from a servicing perspective, the removal of multiple buildings and structures allows for an improved site layout that can accommodate appropriate site sewage treatment through an enhanced treatment facility. And this is an improvement over the existing condition, which includes a holding tank only. The proposed consolidation of several buildings and structures on the lot into one structure is also appropriate as it moves development outside the shoreline buffer and further away from the water and most lot lines. Where the shoreline buffer has been previously disturbed by pre-existing development, the proposal is also to revegetate those areas. From a flooding perspective, given the depths of flooding on the lands, there's really no appropriate location to accommodate new development. As such, flooding hazards really can't be avoided. That said, risks associated with the hazards are proposed to be mitigated. And as I said earlier, the proposed new building will be a more robust design and incorporate better protections through floodproofing. Existing buildings and structures, it should be noted, have no floodproofing and no flooding protection, with habitable space in the buildings entirely exposed to flooding risks. In contrast, the proposed building and structure, the proposed building will have no habitable space below the flood elevation. The scale of the development and access are really what are at issue here. While the proposal is an improvement over existing conditions from many perspectives, it's less appropriate from a floodplain management perspective, as it proposes a more intensive use of the lands, exposing more life and property to harm from flooding hazards. I did just look at the change being proposed, and I'm presenting it here in this table. It looks like from a ground floor area perspective, it could almost be considered a minor redevelopment because, of course, there were two dwellings on the lot previously, and they're being consolidated into one. So the previous buildings had a ground floor area of 134.3 square meters. And the new dwelling, which combines everything into one, is 155.5 square meters. So really we're talking about a 15% increase in the size of the dwelling. But when you look at it from a gross floor perspective, that's when it becomes a little more of an issue. And as I said earlier, the purpose of the floodplain management policies is to really limit how much new life and property is at risk. And from a gross floor area, because it's going to be a two-story building, then really we're increasing the habitable space from 134.3 square meters to 311 square meters, which is about a 134% increase. And then when you look at the entire gross floor area of the build, which is going to include the basement, it really becomes almost a 530% increase. So that is one concern. The other concern is relating to access. And access is a concern because although the technical report did look at this matter and did determine that Springfield Road is above the static flood elevation, what was determined is at the property line, the elevation is about at the property line where egress and ingress is located would be about 284 0.58 meters above mean sea level. So that's about 0.71 meters to below the static elevation and 1.95 meters below the regulatory flood elevation. So the property doesn't really have safe access. Just looking at some of the elevations, just so you guys can get an idea of what's being proposed, it really is helpful to see it from these vantage points. So really the basement would be the only part of the building that would be inundated by flood water, and it would be designed to be inundated by flood water. And that's important because otherwise the building could suffer from uplift as a result of flood water. But if water can come in and out, then the building reaches equilibrium. So it's a good flood-proofing design that's being proposed. And as you can see, all of the second and ground floor portions of the building would be above the flood elevation. Just another way of looking at it through a section drawing, really illustrating that the only portions of the building that could be flooded would be below, would be in the basement level. I do have some photos of the property, but they're all taken in the winter, so it's really hard to see what's going on. District staff did review the application and provided comments in response. These comments note concerns with the scale of the development and the increased habitable space, and they note that the 2024 provincial planning statement and the Muskoka official plan prohibit development and site alteration within areas rendered inaccessible to people and vehicles during times of flood hazards or a floodway. And as the proposal includes redevelopment of a dwelling and enhanced septic system in the floodway of Fairy Lake, which cannot be considered minor due to its scale, as well as raising the grades on site through the use of fill, district staff concluded that the proposal would not conform to the policies of the PPS or the Muskoka official plan. Town staff shares district staff's opinion that the proposal is not consistent with the provincial planning statement. The application was circulated on 2 occasions, on December 18th, 2025 and on January 22nd, 2026, both in accordance with the Community Planning Permit Bylaw. The application was also circulated to the Fairy Lake Association. 2 letters of support were submitted in response to the first circulation, and 2 letters of support were submitted in support of the second circulation. Unfortunately, in the report, only 3 of those letters are attached, but I did forward the 4th to council members yesterday. The Fairy Lake Association provided 2 rounds of comments, noting concerns respecting the proposed retaining wall, riprap, and importation of fill, and the potential impact of these elements on Fairy Lake. As previously noted, no environmental work was done in support of the proposal, so these comments tend to support my earlier comment that this work is needed. The application appears not to conform with the policies of the town official plan, nor be consistent with the provincial planning statement, and therefore staff is recommending application be denied at this time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. I'll call on the applicant or representative to make any comments. Familiar face, welcome.
Thank you. Karen Terziano, 20 Shaw Crescent, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H 1V8. Always wondered what the people that are last felt like. Good afternoon, Chair Stone, your worship, members of council. Thank you for your time today. My thanks to staff who've been very helpful through this process, and a process it was, I must say. I never really realized when I sat in those chairs just what it took to get here. So at the request of planning staff, I had the topographical survey prepared, which Richard pointed out, the engineered flood hazard report, and the site plan for the proposed development. In addition to the This application, we've also applied to the town for septic system, which has been reviewed by the town building department and is now approved pending approval of this application. The one requested study that we did not undertake was the EIS, which I will talk about later on. I appreciate why staff have recommended denial. However, I hope to convince you that there's really not a downside to this application. First and foremost, this is an existing property that has been developed and lived on for 63 years. It currently consists of the 4 buildings, all legal non-conforming. The lot itself is well-treed, well-vegetated, and I did have some slides to show that. How do I get those? Oh, there they are. And there's a summer picture. Yeah, so if you see the red roof building, that's the next door neighbors, and all of that property going down that way is the lot we're talking about. You can see it's very well treed, well vegetated. There's another one. There's the dock at the waterfront. Yeah, I'm going to go back here and keep going for a minute first. So by right, I guess I could have applied for a Class 2 permit, which the 2 existing cottages could be redeveloped where they currently sit, even with a 10% increase, as long as they were reconstructed with flood-proofing measures. That would see the development of one building that sits completely ahead of the 15-meter buffer. It's right on the waterfront. And the other one is set just back of the 15-meter buffer. And I do have a slide, I'm going to show you that. Guess I went the wrong way. Stop going. How come I'm not going anymore? No, it's not. No, it's not working. Okay. Right. So let's get to the drawing. You have the drawing there? Yeah, there's a drawing there. One that I fixed up. Here we go now.
Oh, the drawing.
Can I get the drawing with my little highlights on it too? Thanks. So I'll just keep going. So the new development would only see 1 structure versus 4 structures. And the new build would meet the 20-meter setback, I think it's 19 point something, be completely flood-proofed, and would also contain the enhanced septic system. Okay, so, can I? So, I can't even word this, but so you see the 2 that I've outlined in blue. So those are where the existing buildings sit right now on the survey. And you can see the one on the left side, at least when we're looking at it, that it actually sits right on the lot line. The eaves of the cottage actually overhang into the neighbors. And the entire building is within the 15-meter buffer area. And I just point that out because we could rebuild these here. And I'm just trying to emphasize how this new proposal is so much better. So again, we reduce 4 structures down into 1, we get the septic in, and okay, so the reliefs that are being sought, as Richard pointed out, were because the lot is very small. There were a dozen lots created off the Springfield farm property back in the early 60s. All of them were small in size, and the majority of them have been redeveloped over time and now contain primarily 2-story year-round homes. They all sit in the same floodplain that was shown that this cottage property sits in. The engineer, Duke Engineering, did commit that this property didn't have egress or access problems. Even in the floods of 2016 and 2019, there was no access problems to the property. There was flooding on it, but you could still get in, even at the back of the road where it says that it's long. So when they talk about what the elevation is for flood zone and all that technical stuff, I get that. But I've been there for 60 years, and the property has never been not accessible. The other thing is the neighboring properties have all been filled over time. They probably all sit 2, 3, 4 feet higher than ours. There's actually one picture that actually shows that. Can I have the pictures again, please, Maya? Okay. Well, there's how close the one cottage is right to the waterfront, so that would be a big improvement. No, these are just showing the two-story ones. I had one at one point that showed how much higher the neighboring properties are. So the proposal for the fill that's being brought into this is the fill will just go back of the property. Oh, I know. Can I have that drawing again? You can tell how often I've done this.
A little different on this side.
Yeah. Okay, how would I blow that up with this? Okay, so. I can't remember where I was now. Okay, I'm just gonna go through my notes, never mind. The redevelopment is certainly in keeping with the neighboring properties. As I said, they're all pretty much two-story year-round homes. None of the neighbors have ever had any access problems to their properties as well. Richard's report refers to 2 decks. However, the ground floor of this new build is not actually a deck, it's just a patio area. And as he said, both the neighbors to the left and right have submitted letters of support for this application. The Ferry Lake's concerns, I did reach out to the president of Ferry Lake and the land use planner, trying to provide them with more information as to exactly where the fill was going to go, which is all back where the new build is, and the fill that's required actually by the building department around the septic. So the EIS, I asked that the EIS be waived for a couple of reasons. First, the time it takes to get on a list in Muskoka to get a company to do one is usually about 6 months, and then you need the seasonality to do it. Second, this lot is already developed. It's been developed and lived on for 63 years. The new development proposal isn't going anywhere near the water. It's not going ahead of the 15-meter buffer. The cottage that's ahead of the 15-meter buffer would be removed, and it would not be disruptive as it's just sitting on blocks. There's no foundation or anything like that. So pulling all of that stuff back out of there is actually just going to be an improvement. I could go on, but I probably used my 10 minutes not knowing how to use the remote control. I guess what I'll ask at the end, though, is if council could see their way to approving this and to waive the EIS, we would be happy to meet all of the other conditions that have been proposed by staff. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thanks very much. Council members, comments or questions? Councilor Cloutier.
Through you, Chair. If you look at this property, I mean, we've got buildings and sheds all over, which is fine because it's an old cottage that's a couple old cottages that every property that's at this age and at that back time, people didn't live in them. They were weekend residents and whatever. I think you look what wants to be done here is properties cleaned up, getting rid of. We got total support of the neighbors, which is a big thing. Usually when you get into this situation and you have one neighbor that is okay with it, the other were nothing but trouble. But right here in that whole little hamlet, I'll call it, everybody's in support of it. So they're for it, so that can take a big headaches off of us. It's a betterment to the property. We get a proper septic system put in, which is not now. A holding tank is not a proper septic system. So I think it's only betterment and improvement. for this, we approved this type of build over in Lake Vernon earlier this year on the floodplain waters. And I think we're gonna see going forward that this is gonna be the norm type of build in floodplain areas. It's not that high, really, when you look at it and you look at the height of the trees. I don't really think the roof is gonna be that much higher than the natural trees that are at the front waterfront. So I'm totally for this.
Deputy Mayor Armour.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Stone. Without echoing everything Councilor Cloutier's already said, I can agree with that. You know, I'm a pretty stickler when it comes to policy, but I definitely see this being an improvement to the area right now and what's there right now. So I know with the without the environmental study, are you prepared to do like an environmental brief on something like this? Is that an option?
So I was going to ask that question myself. So I'm going to go to Manager Clark to talk about the difference between a brief or a study.
Sure, thank you. Good question. So through you, Mr. Chair. So what we had suggested was a scoped environmental impact study. So I guess if you think of it in terms of the level of effort, an environmental impact study would be like a full investigation. We'd have to worry about the time of year that these studies are being undertaken. You might have to do it in multiple seasons just to ensure that it's completely thorough. A scoped environmental impact study, you can start to look at, changing the nature of the work you're doing so that you're only focused on a small portion of the property, or you're doing it over 1 year versus multiple years. So less effort. But you could also, and it might be something to consider in this instance, you could scope it even further and just say, we're not really worried about like a full investigation of all the natural features and areas. What we're really just focused on is putting together an appropriate mitigation plan in keeping in mind what the development is and the potential impacts. What do we need to do is going to impact the trees that you want to preserve, impact the buffer that you want to maintain, stop debris and construction material entering the water. So what do you need to do to make sure that this isn't going to impact the aquatic habitat in the lake and what you're trying to do in the buffer? So I think you could focus what you have to do to just be really specific in an environmental impact brief to say, as this property develops, these are the implementation, or these are the mitigation measures that need to be implemented. And that might be appropriate in this instance. The thing is, there's just such a lot. It's not a typical development of a shoreline property because of all the fill importation. So being a little bit more careful and asking for that environmental impact brief, much like staff has asked for and the Fairy Lake Association have asked for, might be appropriate in this instance if you didn't want to go for like a full environmental impact study. I hope that helps.
Follow up?
Absolutely. So who would perform that environmental brief? Is that like putting silk? Is that something we do internally, or is that something you have to hire out for something?
That would be something that a qualified professional would put together and put together like a construction mitigation plan. And we would recommend that that be a biologist or an ecologist, someone with expertise in protecting that aquatic habitat.
Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Stone. And I'm not going to echo everything that's been said, although just generally, I am not opposed to this application at all. And for a number of the reasons that I've said, but primarily if this was a new development, new application, probably we'd look at it differently, but it's not. And as it's been pointed out, it's a vast improvement to what it currently exists there. There's a septic being proposed. That in itself is worth a lot. So from that perspective, I see this as a huge improvement to the site. really the area that I was most interested in was the last question asked by the deputy mayor, what does the EIS entail and all of that. I think it would be pointless to ask for a full EIS looking at something like this when really you already approve of the redevelopment. So if you already approve of the redevelopment, then what is it that you need to focus on? And from my perspective, I think we could narrow it even more. I'm not sure we need to be as precise around, you know, a biologist report. If we approve this development going forward, what we want to do is look at what's the impact of bringing in a lot of fill and how best to do that. So we are looking at, as you said, Richard, the mitigation plan. But I don't think it needs to be as onerous, because we would look at it and say, here are some, you know, basics. Anybody who's been involved in development, there are some basic things that need to be done when you're around a watercourse. So some of that is pretty straightforward. Perhaps there are a few other things that need to be added to this, but I'm very supportive of this application.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Chair Stone, and thanks for the previous comments, and thanks for your presentation. All this stuff is addressed already in CVP planning and through the building permit stage. You apply for a permit, this is what you have to do to mitigate soil, sawdust, debris. That stuff's already covered. So an engineer can satisfy those requirements. Do we talk to someone about, you know, additional plantings that, you know, we take those efforts all the time through planning. So let's look at what happens after, because it's going to happen anyway. But all that stuff's looked after through planning in the building permits process.
Deputy Mayor Armour?
Thanks, Chair Stone. I'm not sure you can answer this. So the fill that's brought in, is it something that's just comes, yeah, does it come from just any landfill site or whatever?
No, very good question, and through you, Mr. Chair. So that was one of our concerns. We did raise that, and there are notations on the drawings that say that it's going to be clean fill. So when you're doing excess soil moving in Ontario, you've got to make sure that you are finding it from an appropriate location that isn't contaminated. You have to do all the testing of that source location. You have to track that what you're moving is the same soil, and then you have to report that that soil is what you're bringing to the property. So there are steps that are in place to make sure it's going to be clean. But these are all things that they don't just happen on every single shoreline residential property. This is something unique to this development, and it's one of the reasons why we'd ask for this if it's going to be an impact study, it would address all of those requirements and put in place the recommendations to make sure that happens. The other thing is, if you do go to a brief, the question about whether it needs to be a biologist or an engineer, I do agree that an engineer could come up with a plan that would identify mitigation measures that could help address these concerns. But what I would hope we would also get out of this plan is the revegetation plan. And I don't think that we would want an engineer to be putting together that revegetation plan. I think that would be done by the ecologist or the biologist. So that's why I would recommend that if you do ask for that, we state that it's by a qualified professional.
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Stone. I think my biggest concern with this application is around the scope of the scope of the grade alterations, how that might affect the shoreline and whatnot on the property. The district and the Fairy Lake Associations shared those concerns, which is probably why they've asked for an EIS in the first place. But although perhaps a lesser study could be done. So I share those concerns as well about the grade alterations.
Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and great discussion around the table. I guess my thought is that this applicant could have put backfill in there previous to doing the application, such as what I think her neighbors did the same thing. And they went ahead and did it without any questions or any permission. The fact that we know what's been on that property for the last 60 years, and there's nothing really that's outstanding that's going to change. And I think to what Councillor Fitzgerald just said, through our community planning permit, do we not establish levels of, like, you have to have a certain kind of fill, you have to have, there's certain regulations that are put in place that we do. Do we really need to have an EIS done or a brief done? Like, I would put a motion forward that we don't do the EIS, and that this proposal is an improvement on the property. It's taking away all the other buildings, as Councillor Cloutier said, putting in a building that is going to be flood proof. The habitable area will not, the basement, no one's going to be living down there. So it's an improvement to the property. And I think this applicant would like to go forward. And I think any kind of EIS or any kind of brief that gets done is going to delay another year or another 6 months. So I would put a motion forward that we go ahead with the conditions that are listed, but without the EIS.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair Stone. You know, after listening to the director speak about the soil that's coming in, et cetera, being treated or being, cleaned, et cetera, I'm happy too with just going forward. So I could actually second that motion. Councillor Renwick.
I don't see any other comments. I do have a resolution here. I'm just going to ask one question. Thanks for bearing with me. Okay, so I do have an amendment. No, I have a motion to replace. Okay. All right. And because it's not in the package, I'm going to have to read it, and it's very lengthy. So, moved by Councillor Renwick, seconded by Councillor Armour. Be it resolved that Planning Council substitutes motion DEV 2026-18, CPP 172, 2025 HTE Terziano 464 Springfield Road for the following. Be it resolved that Planning Council approve Community Planning Permit Application CPP 172, 2025 HTE, the purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsections 2.3.14, 2.15.3, 2.15.7, A, 2.17.4, 4.13.4, 4.13.4, 7, and 4.13.5 of the Community Planning Permit Bylaw 2022-97 as amended. 1. Permit development within the flood zone precinct and the flood zone overlay. Permit development within 30 meters of a natural heritage feature or area. Permit reconstruction of a building, structure, containing a legal nonconforming use that will not match its original size, location, and height. Reduce the setback from a cold water lake from 30 meters to 19.2 meters for a proposed dwelling, and from 30 meters to 15 meters for a retaining wall and septic leaching bed. Reduce the minimum required front yard setback from 20 meters to 19.2 meters for a proposed dwelling. Reduce the minimum required rear yard setback from 10 meters to 3 meters for a proposed dwelling. Reduce the setback for a septic leaching bed from a water body from 30 meters to 15 meters, and increase the maximum permitted lot coverage from 10% to 10.5%. All to permit the construction of a flood-proof two-story, 155.5 square single detached dwelling with a detached 54.6 square ground floor deck and a 26.5 square meter second floor deck, an enhanced private septic system, and associated site alterations. Conditional on the owner entering into an agreement with the town, including the provision of financial securities with terms to implement the recommendations and actions as outlined in the plans and technical reports assessments, and to confirm that development will proceed in accordance with the community planning permit. And further that, upon the conditions of a provisional approval being fulfilled in accordance with subsection 1.17 of the Community Planning Permit Bylaw 2022-97 as amended, a Class 3 Community Planning Permit be issued to authorize the above described development conditional on 1. The proposed development being undertaken in accordance with the Community Planning Permit, including final approved plans and drawings and provisions for the restoration of existing shoreline conditions. Just taking out that. And 2, the actions and recommendations of the final approved flood hazard report and addendum being implemented. All exterior lighting being dark sky compliance in accordance with the Town of Huntsville Outdoor Lighting Bylaw 2016-3 as amended. An appropriate erosion and sediment control measures must be installed prior to commencing any works and maintained until all disturbed areas have been stabilized. All disturbed areas being stabilized and restored to existing conditions or better immediately on completion of the works. The agreement being registered on title to the lands, and no habitable space being permitted below the regulatory flood elevation. You get all that? 1 second. And we are moving this not to approve, but to provisionally approve. All right. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? And that carries. And I will call the main motion as amended. All in favor? All opposed? And that carries. Taking it out. All right, let's get out of here. All right, thank you, everyone. 2 more motions. Moved by Councilor Renwick, seconded by Councilor Schumacher. Be it resolved that confirmation bylaw 2026-11 be received and passed this 11th day of February 2026. All in favor? And that carries. And lastly, moved by Deputy Mayor Armour, seconded by Councilor Schumacher. Be it resolved that we do now hereby adjourn at 4:13 p.m. All in favor? And that carries.